Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
It's hard to believe it's fourth quarter, but we welcome you to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where we help entrepreneurs and business owners find solutions so they don't become overwhelmed and stressed. Are you ready to hear about one of the areas of the 6P business owner formula today? Those 6 areas are people, productivity, pricing, promotion, process, and profits. So as we go through, the question we have to ask ourselves in this fourth quarter, what do I have to do to improve in those areas that will help me grow my business in 2024? And today's guest is going to help us with that. And if you would, Kurt, would you share with our guest, what problem will you help them solve today?
I'm going to help them think about how they scale and how they actually scale their operations, specifically around marketing and some of the sales techniques as well, and help them figure a way to make a great lifestyle business that's good for not just them personally, but for their employees and their families.
Oh, this is going to be a great conversation. I'm excited to have with us Kurt Uhlir. He's known for being at the front lines for creating several the marketing channels we use today, including social media management, influencer marketing, and location-based marketing. In addition to his experience of building and operating dozens of companies, he has advised hundreds more. The unique experience being inside hundreds of high-growth companies with the opportunity to analyze, scale, and make changes of leadership and advisement has labeled Kurt the king of scaling businesses. Kurt, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I so appreciate you carving out time and allowing me to come on, Gary.
Well, I love talking about this because for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, they really struggle to go from that small operator to becoming to scale their business larger. And for some of them, it could be going from 5 employees to 10 or growing their revenue from 1 million to 5 million. But scaling their business becomes the challenges. And today we see that all the time. So I think let's start off with that question of scaling. Some of the things that you saw there, and you think about marketing technology and ways to follow up easier and all those things available. I'll let you kind of I'm going to not give you a question as much as share with us some of your concepts that we should talk about today.
Yeah, I think for me, especially like even around marketing technology and scaling, it's helpful for business owners or operators, because those could be different, to separate themselves into the smaller SMBs, which for me could be a solo entrepreneur up until maybe even about a 20-person team. And then that next group. And I think that's important is, hey, when you're still trying to grow initially, you're going to have different problems than when you've hit flow already. And so for those smaller SMBs, I think the biggest thing that I end up seeing, especially with technology today for around marketing and sales, is they end up feeling overwhelmed and blocked. If I actually get people to open up and they feel safe, what's going to come down is, look, I don't know what to do next. Maybe they don't want to make the wrong decision. And they end up realizing that not doing anything is actually a decision unto itself. And because of that, there's different problems they have than those others. I mean, those smaller SMBs, which there's nothing wrong with that. We all have to grow through that side, but they have to understand that like so much of social media marketing, things can be batched, scheduled, and automated, whether you're a part-time, a solo entrepreneur, or you're a 10-person electrical company. You can batch, schedule, and automate much of your marketing. And when you do that, as opposed to just diving in and trying to do everything in real time, it gives time for much more personal interactions and some of the follow-ups that we probably want to talk about later with scaling. That's very different than a company who's already hit flow, whether they hit flow at 10 employees or 20 employees as they're kind of growing. Those people often, I think they have a completely different set of problems. I mean, if you have 20 employees, you have 30 employees, you have flow, you have your operations figured out. And what tends to come off from a marketing technology perspective is there's a lot of power in being able to automate things and have drip campaigns and send out things. But the leaders who typically started the business and got successful because they know the clients, they're often disconnected from marketing and sales, even follow-ups. And so that ends up being a path to failure. And so because of that, like they end up needing to unlock success in a very different way because of how much technology can get out there. It's like, gosh, it kind of seems like it's a big slowdown, but it's like when you think about, you have a system that would send a message to every one of your clients that you show up to, and whether do an oil change or rebuild a porch for, or whatever that is. Well, if you have a message or a sequence of messages that are going to go out to everyone, have a gut feeling for that. Like you need to walk through whether it's an outside marketing firm or in-house and go, I want you to bring up every single one of these emails that go out, and I want to read them together. And I want to take time to think about it and talk to your people. Don't tell them what to do. But I always joke, I put on my glasses. Hey, I know nothing about this business. You know nothing about the business. Read the email like about the client that's going to get this email after somebody's been in their service provider. What's their experience? And then talk to your marketers about the gut feelings you're having, the fears that client might have, the positive and negative things. And when you schedule time, and when you do that, now you also have you feel much more confident, and you can do the second thing that those leaders need to do when you're companies that hit flow. Because of marketing technology, you should be taking much more time talking to your current and past customers. And I say past customers, somebody who's fired you, do not try to resell them and coming back to you. But your job at the leader at a small business that's found flow is to take time, much more time, like you would have had 10 years ago, getting into the lives of your current clients and how your company interacts, and bring that message back to your employees in a way that they can't.
Yeah, I think some great points there. I'm going to back up a little bit from your first one, and then we'll come into
All right.
flow if that's okay with you and stuff, because you talked about, and I just don't want to pass this up because I'm still seeing a lot of small businesses not understand this batch, schedule, and automate.
Yep.
And I know what you mean by that, but I'm going to go break it down to the small side. Share with us what you mean there, because I know people's hearing about funnels and different ways to contact people. And, there's still this old philosophy. Some people think email's dead. It's not. We know we're getting it. But share with us in the marketing aspect, when you're talking about that batch, schedule, and automate, how a small business could look at this to really improve their efficiencies and processes of their business, but also improve their customer service right along with it.
Sure. This applies for email as well, but let's do social media because I think it's a little bit more evident there.
Yep.
So there's lots of small businesses. Let's take real estate for an example. So real estate agents get paid when transactions close. And so typically the real estate agent, if you look at their social media, they're posting just about things that would be of interest to somebody who's an active buyer and seller, because that's what their day-to-day lives are. Like, I'm showing homes, I'm going to closings, I'm helping somebody think about maybe a little bit of budget. But if you look at a successful real estate agent, most of their business comes because they found a way to talk to clients that are not actively buying and selling. Knowing that, let's say, if you're in an area that people tend to buy homes every 10 years, that means if it's 6 months to buy a home and somebody buys a new home every 10 years, that means that the friends of yours on Facebook or Instagram or whatever you're on that means if it takes 6 months to buy a home and they only buy a home every 10 years, that means 90 to 95% of the time that they're not an active buyer. That means if all you're posting about is here's an open house and I just did a closing, well, that means people are going to snooze and they're going to not pay attention to your social media content. And you know that as an agent. If I talk to any real estate agent, they know that. Same thing for general contractors or any other service industry. Well, if you go to the agent and go, okay, well, let's sit down right now, not on your day-to-day life and think about your clients, and go, well, let's come up with 80% of the content that would be of interest to a homeowner or potential homeowner, and like actually plan ahead of time, what would content be of interest to them, and come up with 20 posts for people that are not actively buying and selling, but are very related to still what you do in real estate, and then just 5 posts about buying and selling. Those are going to happen by nature for what you do in your job. They go, oh, I got it. If you ever ask an agent to do that as the week goes on, as the month goes on, it'll never happen. It'll always be almost 100% content on actively buying and selling. But they could sit down and talk about, here's lawn care tips. They could do exactly what you're doing by saying, hey, how could you come up with some good content? Well, maybe you could interview somebody that does inspections about what should somebody think about in the winter. And then that's content for email, content for social media, and then you could drip that out to people. But well, that's what batching looks like. It says, hey, let's sit down right now and without thinking about anything else, come up with a series of content, social media. Same thing for email. Email's not dead, to your point. And so, hey, you had a client that had a successful experience with you and you think you served them well. Well, you probably want to send them 6 to 10 messages over the next year. We'll come up with those all at once and think about, what does that look like? All right, when's the best message at what time? If somebody hasn't used your service in 6 months, well, are they getting close to needing you again? Or are they still a couple of years out? And when you batch it, you're going to have much better content because you're going to put yourself in the place of your clients. And that's different than the scheduling bit. Staying with social media, for those clients or those audience viewers that have found flow, gosh, the worst thing a leader can do is go schedule content on Facebook. They have a Facebook page, they have a group. There are tools built into Facebook that will do that for you for free. Well, you can have somebody in your team do that. You can pay a VA. You can have somebody in the Philippines that does that work for you. Any of it's fine. But if you batched it, you have no problem then handing that off to somebody else because you know the content they're scheduling is what you've already approved.
Yeah, and where people think they don't have time, this batching is such a great concept. I use it with, I'll be honest, podcasting. I use it with articles that I write. I don't sit down every week and write one article. I've got an article a week that I put out to my group, and I batch those up because you don't have time to be able to do that. It becomes such a way to influence. And this is kind of interesting because one of the questions I wanted to ask you anyway, and I think it flows into even flow, so we're talking to both groups here, is what do you believe is really the difference between authority and influence? And how can we, the company, kind of bring those customers into establishing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It applies very much to marketing, but I know some of our audience will also think that it applies a lot to leadership, and it does. A lot of times, small businesses have been very good at getting to where they're at because they've had an autocratic type of leadership. Do what I say the way I say it, or kind of there's a door. So authority and influence, while some people use them interchangeably, they have distinct nuances. Authority is the power or the right to give orders. I'm the boss. I have the ability to tell you what to do, to make decisions, and frankly, to enforce obedience. It's structural often because I am the boss. There's a title or a position. I may do your paycheck. It's also it's that form that the term boss often comes to. I'm bossy. I'm telling you exactly what to do. Influence, on the other hand, is the ability to shape thoughts, behaviors, or actions without having formal authority. Look, we all know, like, you do not have formal authority over your clients. And so however you choose to lead your teams, that's fine. I do believe leading from influence is much better than leading from authority, influence, and coaching. But often the small business owner they may have built their team from an authority perspective. You cannot take that into marketing because if you do, things just come off the rails. And we can probably talk a little bit more about those differences too, about how they apply.
Yeah, that's interesting because I love how you shared in both areas because, one thing you hear a lot about is people influencer marketing. Well, that real estate agent that you gave an example of, when they have 10 years in between, that's when they really can influence. And they can somewhat set their authority that they're the expert in the industry because they're giving them information, but becomes top of mind when they continue to flow those people because maybe they're not going to buy the house, but they know somebody that is. And that becomes in those marketplaces where that real estate agent sets themselves apart versus that person that just says, oh, I sold the house, or, I listed a house today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing wrong with speaking from authority or expertise. So you're a real estate agent, you're an electrician, you have wisdom that I would not have as a layperson or just a homeowner. You should speak from that experience. But I mean, in my journey, I've advised startup founders, small businesses, private equity backed CEOs, heck, even a sitting president of the United States. And so I've seen that true growth, especially in marketing, it thrives on influence more than authority. And so I think if you're trying to tell people this is what they have to do, like, you don't ever want to do that in your content and marketing, my experience. You want to tell them instead, you want to think about influence. And so you can talk about expertise. Instead of saying this is what you have to do, tell them, in my experience, this is the 5 things you need to do to your house in winter for a successful sale to maintain your home, whatever that looks like. And it also comes from it comes from thinking about talking, not just talking to your customers, but listening to them. And I mean, like, no, really listen and hear them. So we talked about, before, about like the leader, the marketer, the owner of the company should be talking to their clients and past clients. Why did you fire us? Why did you use another vendor next time? Don't sell to them. Ask them questions and hear them. And you do not have to agree with them, but if you want to grow, if you want to grow influence, you must understand them. Which means, look, you may think you're the best electrician in your town, but if your clients don't think that, if your past clients don't think that, you're wrong. Like, you might actually be able to do the best technical job, but it does matter what people are thinking about. And when you do that, even if you follow up with people that had a horrible experience and you let them feel heard, you're going to find that they feel valued. So one, you do reduce a little bit of the negative as well, but you naturally, when you do that, people will become influencers of your brand when you're growing that influence over time, as you talked about.
Well, it's no different than really an exit interview for an employee, a long-term employee or someone that's been short-term. When you learn from those, you can make those changes that need to be made. Maybe not to change that individual, but for that next one that's there. And I think that becomes so important in the customer cycle, is understanding what's going on. Because sometimes, let's be honest, when we own the company, we're not touching all those different areas depending on what size of the company is. If you're a small 1 or 2 person operation, then you probably are. But the thing is, most businesses have other people that's doing that. So it really gives us a good understanding of what's going on. I think another one that's really important that I wanted to talk to you about, Kurt, because I think it applies to both groups that we've been talking about, is this marketing and sales and how much to invest, and how much do I spend in these areas to be able to get that. And every product and service and business is different, so I know there's no formula, but I'd love you to just share your concepts, which you would share with them, of thinking about in marketing and sales.
I mean, there's not a hard formula, but there's some concepts that do come down to some formulas, I think, as well. And so I think for most small businesses, when I look at them, I mean, the blanket statement is they should be spending and investing more than they are, but they should be investing it wisely. Way too many businesses, they have poor vendors, they outsource people that promise things. We have a property in Blairsville, Georgia. I just saw a small business up there has been fed up with some of the marketers. They posted in a local group that said they only want to pay for results, like leads in the door. Well, you could do that, but you're probably going to end up not getting the actual the results that you want. But most businesses, small businesses, they under invest, and it tends to be because of where they choose to spend their money. I think concept wise, they should always be thinking about whether there's a smaller side we talked about, or on the bigger side. Heck, even private equity backed companies should kind of follow this. You need to be thinking about, how do I split my investment into short-term results and long-term investments? And so I say that because, just like we talked about batching, when you're separating where your time is spent, when you're separating where your money is spent, because hey, it's not just spending money in marketing. You need to spend time if you want to do it well. People on the short-term side, overall, they tend to focus on, especially small businesses, pay-per-click advertising, Google, Facebook, things that are great for that. And nothing's wrong with that, but that's short-term revenue generation. Add $100, get money out the other end if you have it set up properly. And that's good, but you're never going to get that flywheel that just runs by its own unless you're investing in the longer term. So I'm a big believer in that. But to your point about kind of like, is there an equation? There's yes, but not the one that a lot of people think. Like, sometimes people go, hey, you should put in this percentage And I do believe in percentages, but where most small businesses fail, not just in marketing, but in growth in general, especially in a healthy lifestyle business, is they need to remember profit first. I don't care whether you're a single person or whether or not you have 50 employees. What too many people do, whether on marketing or hiring their next employee, is they go, oh, I made another 100 grand this year. And then they go hire somebody else. They made 500 grand. So they go hire somebody else. And they're like, no, 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 no. Like, maybe you need to do that, but you need to always be taking money out for profitability, both to actually pay yourself, but also to invest when the time is right. After you've done profit first, then I do think most small businesses should be looking at investing 2 to 10% of their overall revenue into their, after they take off those core expenses, into marketing going forward. And then they do need to split between that shorter term and long term. As you start to hire more people, you should be investing in search engine optimization. It's going to take time. Anybody that promises you that they're going to get Google to pay attention to you in like 2 to 3 months, they're wrong. Best case is 6 to 9 months, and it really might be like 18 months as well. There's things they can show you on leading indicators, but your real numbers aren't going to change for 12 months or 18 months. Content creation. Well, too many of these people will come out there and say, yeah, we do articles. Every one of our articles about 750 words. It's good. Well, if you're thinking about long term, well, now you say, what length does this need to be to cover the topic that we're trying to fill? And then you want Google to care about it longer term, but shorter term, you pay somebody then to say, go put that in a newsletter for us. Go create one article, create 10 different social media posts that will drive people to that, and space those out. That goes back to the batching we talked about before. Video and social. I mean, every small business owner I talk to, like, I would love to have 5,000 people local following me on YouTube, or, in my group. Well, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens from consistency when you're intentionally investing money and time longer term. And so that does usually take a percentage, but do not ever jeopardize the profit first mentality, because that's where the stability of your company is going to go. Because if you're just running it near bankruptcy, maybe you're growing like crazy, but one thing changes, not just like a COVID thing. One thing changes, everybody's out of business then.
Yeah. Some great advice, Kurt. I appreciate you sharing that. And I love your concept and love the profit first concept, because I think too many business owners, they invest before the profit's actually there. And boy, that's the wrong way to do it. Is you have to really look at what's going to generate the revenue to get you the profits that you need, and know what your profit number is. There's one more question, and we're running up on that time, because always when I have these great discussions, they seem like they go really fast, and you're sharing some great information. But I want to ask this question, and hopefully you can kind of answer it in a short amount of time that's there. But navigating disruption, because I really feel we're in the fourth quarter of this year. We're going into 2024. There's some definitely uncertainty out there. I'm a very optimistic person, and always say, if there's a recession coming, you decide not to participate and you can make things happen. But I also want people to think about how can they navigate some of that disruption if there is in their business. And from your advice, what would you share with small business owners?
Don't be scared. I think your point about what I hear from you is being intentional. And I think that's the key. You can't control what happens in the market. You can't control what other businesses do, but you can control what you do. And fear is going to control things for you instead. And so to me, I think really it's always a great time at the end of the year to look through and say, where am I spending money, especially recurring money? And is that a wise place? Do it personally, do it at work. It's amazing. Every time I do it, if it's been more than like 90 days, I go through and look at what's monthly cost, and I go, why am I paying for that? And it's maybe something that crept in, or something maybe that I don't need, even though I did need it 92 days ago when I did it last. And so that's a healthy thing. But the other part about surviving disruption, especially for the small business, is when you're not selling to clients, do something that is actually going to add value to your business. That's that content creation we talked about. So many small business owners are a wealth of knowledge, and they think somebody else needs to do things, versus take out your phone and do a YouTube video that talks about some problem you just solved, or do a voice note and record it and give it to a virtual admin that can transcribe it into an article. They don't know your business, but you do. So if you're not seeing a client, take ownership of that time. Don't let it just go to waste.
Great advice. Great advice. I appreciate you sharing that. Just as we were discussing, I wanted to get your take on that. Before I let you go, I have one more question I want to make sure I ask, and then we'll give them your contact information and everything. What would be your best business advice or tip that you would share with small business owners?
Gosh, I think we talked, just a minute ago, I think about kind of thinking about where you might be wrong in your business. I think the bigger thing is for the small business owner, they should think about net weaving instead of networking. Networking always feels self-serving to me. Can you help me or not? Net weaving is looking at your clients, looking at people you meet and saying, can you do something that could change that person's life without ever benefiting you? And when you do that as a small business owner and they know it's selfless, you end up becoming a trusted resource, and they will come back to you, or they will tell people about your business.
Oh, I love that one. I do that myself, because when people need to be connected, I'm very fortunate being on this podcast. We've had over almost 300 shows, and I'll know somebody and I'll hear them speak. And it's like, they get the need to know this person and just make that introduction. That's how you become memorable. And then, of course, what do they want to do? It's they want to give back to you. So they're going to keep you in mind in that same area. So what a great one to share. Kurt's website is there. So it's KURTUHLIR.com. We'll have that in show notes. So please go to that. Check out his website. It's got some great information up on his website that he shares there. Kurt, we just can't thank you enough for joining us today on the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Gary.
Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. That's all the time we have. But until the next time, go out each day and continue to grow your business. Remember, don't ascend to the top of the mountain by yourself. Who are you going to bring along with you? It makes it a lot more fun. When you help others achieve success, you find significance in your life. Thanks for joining us today. Make it a great day.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows, and you get your time back.